What up, peeps? Your friendly neighborhood Monomachos here speaking to you. Part two of my ongoing travel vlog of my recent pilgrimage to Russia. First of all, I want to point out some of you have commented that you thought I didn't have a good time, or maybe I was disconnected, or my delivery was not that great. Let me lay aside all questions about my recent pilgrimage. I completely and thoroughly enjoyed myself. Completely. It took me the better part of a week to get back into the swing of things. The earlier video I made was during that time, and I was still rather exhausted and somewhat disconnected. I was feeling an extreme sense of disconnect at that time upon return to the United States, because I feel like I left a significant part of my life, of my being, in Russia. Part of it is because I'm well over 50 now. I'm pushing 60, and I don't think people who are watching this or reading this blog, who are under 40, understand what we in America in the West have lost as far as normalcy. And it was very obvious to me when I was in Russia. Okay, there was just a sense of wonder and a sense of loss, of regret. So I think only those of you who are over 40, definitely if you're over 50, will understand what I'm talking about. I do want to talk today about Butovo, but before I do that, I do want to comment on one of the things that really brought it home to me was the amount of children I saw. It seems that the birth dearth has been reversed in Russia. Okay, the Russian government offers subsidies and tax breaks and mortgage assistance, rent assistance, from what I hear, to those who have two or more children. And I saw families pretty much everywhere. When I was in Semkhoz, which is where Father Alexander Men was killed, this is just an example. Goodness, where are my manners? There was a lovely community center there that had a festival hall and a video room, and as the two churches outside next to it, but also on the other side, a nice little playground for children, for toddlers. And I saw toddlers there with their young mothers, and what really struck me was that besides the rides that are there, there were all these little nursery rhyme fairy tale characters, little statues that were only about 3 feet high, thereabouts. So they were eye level with the children, and I thought this is interesting. I'm sure it exists in other places, but I've never seen it myself in America. But somebody took the time out to not only put rides and teeter-totters and swings and sliding boards, but also, little gnomes, little trolls, little figurines that'll entice children and entertain them. So, okay, Butovo, the killing fields. This is clearly one of the high points of the trip for me. I've been there before, like I said, 2 years ago. However, they've made some improvements to it, some more architecture that brought it home. I don't know if any of you have ever been to the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C. I haven't, but several years ago there was a traveling exhibit of it, which came to Tulsa, and I went and saw it. It was almost life-size. And anyway, what it is just this V, this plain granite wall, which you walk into and you walk down to, and the names of all the soldiers and servicemen and Marines and sailors and airmen who were killed in Vietnam are etched there. Okay, very moving. They had something like that this time at Butovo. Instead of going into a V, it went into a rectangle like this, okay? And what it was, and they had the names of everybody by month and date who was killed there at Butovo, which is outside of Moscow. Okay, so that was that kind of brought it home. I can read Russian, and a lot of the names, of course, were Russian, but I saw German names, I saw French names, I saw Chinese names, a significant amount of Chinese names. They just some of them may have been Tatars, I imagine, and the it just brought it home. It just brought it home. So we walked there, and in the graphic attended to this video log is is a part of the wall, and standing in front of it is Father Ilya, who is giving us a lecture on the significance of Butovo. Again, I can't speak highly enough of Father Alexander. One of the things that I liked about this trip was there were several, it was religiously themed. We had services, and we had a service there. And it was at the site of one of the mass graves. It was very profound. And it was at one of those mass graves is a large cross. After it was over, Father Ilya asked us to look around because it's in a forested area, and there were several trees, hundreds of trees. And here's the thing, they were all deformed. It was weird. Some of them were twisted. Some of them had more than one root, like five trees coming out of one root, and a couple of them were twisted. Others had roots that came together. They were all deformed. And only there at the site of the mass graves did you see that. Admittedly, it was a large area. But outside, once you got outside of Butovo, again, it's in a heavily forested area, all the trees are normal. A father said something, it's almost as if nature itself could not stomach what was going on there. This was roughly the years 38, 39. The NKVD would just send these vans, unmarked vans, unlicensed vans into neighborhoods and just pick up people in the middle of the night and take them there. And there was a quota to fill of how many people you killed. Were they guilty? Who knows? Of what? Probably not. Did some of them try to squeal and to save their skin? Yeah, probably. But this was just terror for the sake of terror. And it just got me to thinking, because, this was a time when the United States had already recognized the Soviet Union as a legitimate government, much to our everlasting shame. And for those who go on and on about Hitler and the Second World War, we must remember one thing. Stalin became Uncle Joe to us. And this was at a time in which we knew he had perpetrated a Holocaust already in the Ukraine. At the time that we made common cause with Stalin, we didn't know about the Holocaust perpetrated by Hitler because he hadn't perpetrated it yet. The actual Holocaust didn't begin until 1942, after the Wannsee Conference. So I want us to remember this as we go about waving the flag and raving about democracy, mud democracy, and why we need to be antagonistic towards Russia, which is an electoral democracy, a capitalist, free market-ish type of government, because we turn on a dime when it suits us. Our oligarchy, they don't care about democracy or our founding principles or anything like that. That's just something that they feed us to make us stand in line at the office, at the veterans office, so we can, or the recruitment office, and so then we can go off and fight and get blown up because General Electric wants that to happen. Folks, I'm a right-winger. I'm completely on the conservative side of things. But I also know when we're being fed a bill of goods. And the killing fields, Stalin's barbarity, brought it all home to me. Well, enough of a digression. Forgive that little political editorializing. But when we were there, we walked into the office. It was in a house that had been taken over by the Soviet government, and it was made the offices of the commandant there. And we saw photographs there from that era, and each of us walked through a door, and it was the door in which, if memory serves, the executions would take place. And it was very profound and moving because it was pitch black. Once we got past the first 10 seconds of walking through this door, then we saw these photographs about yay high hanging from the wall that were lit, and they were the photographs of some of the victims who died there. And then that was in the middle of this large room. It's my dog. On the walls were maps of where other killing fields throughout the Soviet Union were placed throughout the entire Soviet Union. The enormity of this barbarism, of this Bolshevism, this atheism, is something to consider. I guess God has a sense of humor, though, doesn't he? And he used this joker named Hitler over here, who decided at the last minute to betray his buddy Stalin and invade Mother Russia. And we know how that story ended, don't we? So, Jesus told us that thou art Peter, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against the church. And he was right. God will find a way to preserve his church. In the meantime, I'm going to talk later about the economic and geopolitical things that have come to mind. And until then, Pax Vobiscum. Let's try to love one another. Adios.